Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise this evening to speak to a bill and act respecting the preservation of Canada's water resources put forward by my good friend and colleague, the member from Lac Saint Louis. I believe that all too often we take water for granted. It is something that is all around us, easily accessed, and few of us give a second thought to. Last week, in the face of the ongoing state of emergency in Ottawapiskat, our party brought forward a motion calling on the government to take immediate action to ensure safe, clean running water for all Canadians, and in particular on our First Nations reserves. In this year's Government Commission National Assessment of First Nations Water and Wastewater National Roll-Up Report, it was revealed that after examining 97% of all First Nations water and wastewater systems, 73% of all water systems on reserves were either a high 39% or medium 34% risk to human health. Thankfully, that motion received unanimous consent by all parties of this House, and we now wait impatiently for it to be acted on. Not only must we keep water safe, but it is essential that we preserve this precious resource. Canada holds 20% of the world's fresh water. To place that in perspective, as was indicated by the member from Lac Saint Louis, the United States has 1/10 of our fresh water resources, with almost 9 times our population. The United States and the rest of the world covet our water supply. There are those in Canada, industry and otherwise, who simply lack the necessary commitment to the conservation of our water supply. The false notion that water is an entirely renewable resource is far too prevalent, and we need more awareness of the issue. Even our Great Lakes system is seen as an endless water supply. Few realize that only 10% is renewable. Climate change is not only diminishing our own freshwater supplies, but creates shortages in countries without the same natural resources as Canada. Take, for instance, countries in sub-Saharan Africa and India who face water depletion issues every day. Since the 1950s, proposals to export our fresh water to the United States have abounded, making bulk water exports an issue of profound national concern. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Party believes the issue of bulk water exports is one of profound national concern. And I'm disappointed, as are most Canadians, that the Conservative Party does not, as expressed by the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment, and has proven that their former commitment to end bulk water exports are merely more hollow words. We need to take action, and this bill, brought forward by my colleague, takes appropriate and much-needed steps to keep water in its home basin or in its ecosystem. This bill will also have the coincidental result of effectively prohibiting the wholesale movement of water to areas outside Canada's borders by, without limitation, tunnel, canal, pipeline, water bag, or aqueduct. It is especially timely as the calls to export Canada's water have increased in recent years. A previous Conservative government failed to secure Canada's right to preserve its fresh water within its national boundaries under both the Canada-United States Free Trade Agreement and then the subsequent North American Free Trade Agreement. And we can only imagine what they are secretly doing under CETA. This present government has not, by any measure, shown it is willing to fight for Canadian natural resources as it kowtows to U.S. protectionism and gives away our competitive advantages like the Canadian Wheat Board and puts our supply management at risk. The proposed Canada Water Preservation Act is a necessary measure to backstop our fresh water. The bill prohibits the removal of fresh water in bulk from one aquatic basin to another by any means. The bill also accomplishes another environmental goal insofar as it prevents the spread of invasive species from ecosystem to ecosystem. Take, for instance, the ravages caused by invasive species like zebra mussel or the Asian carp. Moving water from one basin to another takes species from their natural basin and introduces them into a foreign environment, often with surprising consequences. While all the provinces currently prohibit the export of water in bulk, by establishing a national treatment for the issue of water export, we signal not only that this is a vital pan-Canadian issue, but also that it addresses the political realities of changing governments, province to province. This bill builds on earlier efforts by a previous Liberal government to ban the export of water from the Great Lakes and freshwater bodies under joint federal-provincial jurisdiction. We on this side hold steadfast to Canada's water sovereignty, more so in the face of growing calls from conservative-minded bodies to export our fresh water. This is precisely why my colleague, working with the program on water issues at the University of Toronto's Monk Centre, has tabled this legislation to close the door to bulk water exports. The time to act is now. Already conservative think tanks are advocating for the privatization and corporatization of water. In August 2008, the Montreal Economic Institute published a report that states, and I quote, "Freshwater is a product whose relative economic value has risen substantially and will keep rising in the coming years. It has become a growing source of wealth and an increasingly worthwhile investment." Meanwhile, last June, the Fraser Institute called for a complete elimination of the provincial statutes and regulations prohibiting the bulk export of water. We should be frightened, Mr. Speaker. Maud Barlow of the Council of Canadians put it very well when she noted in her book, Blue Covenant, quote, "Imagine a world in 20 years in which no substantive progress has been made to provide basic water services in the Third World, or to create laws to protect source water and force industry and industrial agriculture to stop polluting water systems, or to curb the mass movement of water by pipeline, tanker, and other diversions, which will have created huge new swaths of desert." I've said many times in the past, Mr. Speaker, that at the dawn of civilization, battles were fought over wells, and I am afraid that in the future, if we do not act now, wars will be fought over lakes, and these wars will be much more devastating. In October, I was pleased to attend the launch for the Wellington Water Watchers in my riding of Guelph, Walk for Water. The Wellington Water Watchers are doing a great job with not only the preservation, conservation, and restoration of our water resources, but are tireless advocates and work diligently to increase awareness of the issues surrounding what many would consider our most precious resource. They know very well that water is among the most multifaceted of public policy issues. It is ubiquitous and cross-jurisdictional. Water touches every aspect of life and society, including the economy, and all levels of government are involved in protecting and managing this most precious of our resources. Water is clearly a fundamental human right. This is a moral fact. No human being can live long without potable water. Contaminated drinking water kills over 2 million people annually around the world, the majority of them children. The lack of water for sanitation also undermines human health throughout the developing world. It is our duty to ensure that our fellow human beings, wherever they may live, have affordable access to the water they need. But this can be achieved only through conservation and by both protecting the quantity and the quality of our water. Among the most complex of all water issues is the recognition and codification in international law of the human right to water. We are today at the beginning of the road toward meaningful recognition of the right to water. The non-binding resolution adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in July 2010 was a crucial step toward the goal of establishing a human right to water that can hopefully result in all people around the world having access to water that they require for survival and dignified living. Unfortunately, Canada abstained. Having one of the largest supplies of fresh water in the world, we must accept our place as a leader on the issue of water conservation and be mindful of the need to protect this valuable resource. Canadians have a real need to preserve our water and respect its place in the environment. Doing nothing leaves us with a clear and present danger of the wholesale movement of water. Protection of our natural resources is imperative. I urge all my colleagues on both sides of the House to make the preservation of our water resources paramount and to support this bill when it comes to a vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.